Glowing Up Latina, Season 1, Episode 18.
Hi, everybody. Roe versus Wade was officially overturned by the Supreme Court. And as three Latinas, we just felt we couldn't let this episode air with the original content that we were going to share. We felt it was very important to talk a little bit about what happened yesterday. So I'm Christina.
I'm Amanda.
And I'm Liana.
How are you guys doing? How are y'all feeling?
It's very disappointing. You know, on Friday when I read the news, I was just also like, that really brought down my energy. I'm already sick. And then when I heard the news, I was in the middle of work, like typing, and I saw the notification pop up on my phone. And I was just like, what the fuck? And it's disheartening to just be living in this moment. And I feel like we took like 100 steps back.
Yeah, I agree. It's just, so I'm the type of person that I don't really like looking at the news because all of it is just so depressing. And then I just like kind of like have, like I'm in it all of the time. Like if I don't separate myself from it, like it's what I think about like at that, like all of the time. So I have to step away from it. And I couldn't do that for this because it's just so unfair. It's just so sad to see, you know, this happening in a country that's supposed to be free, you know, like a country that's supposed to be so advanced, quote unquote, like from all of the other countries. Like for a country that has so much pride, we do a lot of shitty things. I was reading that a lot of like abortion clinics were closed yesterday, right? I mean, Friday. And I was just like, that's so sad. That is so sad because it's like our government is so based on like religion that it's just like,
especially when they say you have a separation of church and state, and that's not what this is right now, clearly, obviously.
Right. Yeah. It's like it's so much more than religion. It's a medical thing that happens to a lot of women, you know? And so for religion to kind of come in and say, hey, this is wrong, is like what makes you say that it's wrong, and why is it wrong? Because it hurts your feelings. Like tough nuts.
And it goes against your religion when, again, religion is not supposed to take any part in our political decisions here.
Yeah.
So
I follow a couple of Catholicism pages, I guess, on Facebook. Like I liked them at some point in my life. And on Friday, it was very upsetting to see the Catholic. I don't know if the Catholic Church has officially made a statement, like if the Vatican has, but I know these Catholic pages were celebrating what was happening, and I had to go and unlike them, unfollow them, because I don't know, we talked about it in a religion episode. I grew up Catholic. I don't subscribe to all of the ideals of Catholicism. And in that moment, I was just like, I don't even know why I associate myself with this faith. So that was hard. It was hard to see what was happening because I remember the night so clearly when Donald Trump got elected and it was official that he had won the Electoral College. And this was always a reality. He campaigned on making this happen. And he did everything in his power to make sure that it would happen. I mean,
yeah, I've mentioned before, not on the podcast, but like outside of the podcast, that I feel like he opened up Pandora's box.
We have this platform, so obviously we are going to use it as we see fit. And we are three women who believe that anybody has the right to do whatever they want with their body. What we will do with this episode is I will give a little history on Roe, kind of how we got here, what it's based on, the precedents that it's based on. Some of this is research that I did independently, but a lot of it is law school. So we're going to get like a crash course, like a mini constitutional law course very short because these cases, like, they talk about so much in them. Like, it doesn't cover just one issue in the case. Like, there's one big question, but within that question, there can be a ton of little sub questions. I'm hitting big picture and bullet points for you guys. But obviously, if you are interested, the internet, it's out there. Just, I'll name all the cases. I'll list them in the case notes. And these opinions, they're available to read online in full. Some of the older opinions are kind of convoluted. I definitely had trouble with them in law school. But like the opinion from Friday, you do not need to be a lawyer to read the full text. It's over 200 pages, but it has very wide margins. The text, it goes by fast, and you don't have to be a lawyer to understand the main idea of what is being said. Yes, of course, there are some things like the precedent that they're talking about, but I really want to emphasize that you do not have to be a lawyer to understand what the opinion is saying. So with that, okay, how did we get to Roe versus Wade? So Roe is actually based on previous decisions that were made to establish a right to privacy. And that's why it's so important. Like, yes, abortion is a big part of it, but in the larger context, it's people's right to privacy, not just women. It's everybody that's affected by this. So one of the first cases that we're going to talk about, there were obviously cases before this, but again, I'm hitting big points or big picture points. It's Griswold versus Connecticut, which was a 1965 case that established the right for married couples to buy and use birth control. A provider was arrested for providing information about contraceptives to a married couple, and the Supreme Court said that married couples have a fundamental right to privacy in their own bedrooms. And then in 1967, you have Loving versus Virginia, which gave people the constitutional right to marry not whoever they choose, because same-sex marriage was still not legal, but to marry outside of your own race, interracial marriage. That's what Loving versus Virginia establishes. Then you get to Eisenstadt versus Bernard, which is a 1972 case that falls back on Griswold, where it says that single people also had the same right to buy and use contraception. Then you get to also in 1972, Stanley v. Illinois, which was a case where this couple, they were not married, but they lived together off and on for about 20 years. They had 3 children together. Then the mom, she died, and the state had a law, Illinois had a law, where if the children belonged to an unwed mother, they automatically became wards of the state, and the father had no right to his children. Yeah. So,
what?
Yeah.
Y'all, I'm learning so much right now.
So what
I am
happened?
invested.
Sorry. So what happened to the children then? Now, sorry if you don't know.
They went into the system.
Because that's what I was gonna ask. Like, how old were they at that point? Yeah, that
the dad had to fight to
them
get them back. And that's what Stanley v. Illinois establishes or recognizes the right of unmarried fathers.
Did he win? I'm assuming he won.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Okay.
So then we get to 1973, which is when Roe v. Wade was decided. And in that case, what happened was there was a Texas law that prohibited all abortions except in those cases where it was necessary to save the mother's life. The Supreme Court said, you can't do that. You can't ban abortions. The mark that they gave was fetal viability, which is when the fetus is able to live outside of the womb on its own. Roe also set up the trimester framework that we're familiar with now. And it said that the states did not have a right to ban abortion during the first trimester. After that, there were different restrictions put in place. But this court also rejected the idea that a fetus was a person by saying there was no indication that the word person in the Constitution was meant to include the word fetus. Now, this is important for later. Then you get to 1992, where you have Casey versus Planned Parenthood. This case upheld Roe, but overturned the trimester framework regarding abortions and said that restrictions on abortions could not place an undue burden on the person seeking an abortion. So in this case, there was a waiting period, a 24-hour waiting period. If the woman was married, they had to notify their spouse, and their spouse had to give consent for the abortion to take place. And if the individual was a minor, they had to have parental notice. Now, I think the only one in this case that they were like, that places an undue burden is the spousal notice. Because I know pre-Friday, some states did have 24-hour waiting periods. So we're going to fast forward again to 2016, which kind of brings us up to date with Whole Woman's Health versus Hellerstadt. And this was also the court upholding Casey, so therefore reaffirming Roe v. Wade, because the court said that Texas was placing an undue burden on people seeking abortions by requiring abortion providers to have admitting privileges within 30 miles of their clinics. So an abortion provider has a clinic. You don't have to go to a hospital to have an abortion.
Oh,
now, that clinic has to be within 30 miles of a hospital, and the abortion provider, who is a doctor, has his MD, like is a legitimate doctor, has to have admitting privileges at that hospital. And the whole intent, quote unquote, behind the law, according to Texas, was that it was to save the life of a woman in case something goes wrong. But it is very rare for abortion procedures to be botched or to cause some type of life-threatening danger. Abortions are very safe procedures, and most of them are done through the use of pills. Because because you can perform or have an abortion through pills up until a certain point in your pregnancy, and then after that you have to do the DNC procedure, which people refer to as like the vacuum procedure.
I see.
So depending on the stage of your pregnancy, you can be given a pill for an abortion, that it's not just solely, the vacuum procedure.
I didn't know that.
I think a lot of people think that it's automatically the vacuum procedure, and that's not what it is.
Right. Like I feel like when I hear about like the pill, it's like, oh, like a plan B, but I'm guessing it's like a plan B, but on steroids. If you could take it like.
It's a 2-part pill. You take one there in the clinic, they give you the other one, and then you usually wait. I want to say it's 24 hours. I could be wrong. Before you take the next one. And of course, you experience some cramping, bleeding, and the effect or intensity of those symptoms vary from person to person.
Wow. Did not know that.
I feel like there's a lot of things that people don't know or understand about abortions.
Right.
They automatically just, no, women can't do that.
Right.
It's very new for me because I'm scared to admit it, but growing up, as you guys all know, like I grew up Catholic, and my parents were very, very Catholic. And so I had grown up pro-life, actually. And it wasn't really up until like recently, I want to say like maybe like a year and a half, 2 years ago, that I was just like, no, like that's not fair. Like, what if there are just so many circumstances, so many different situations that no one should, or any religion should really like have a say in the things that you do. And I think about that like in terms of like abortions, like women's rights. And I also think about that with like pride and the LGBTQ community as well, because the Catholic Church has a lot to say about everything, and it shouldn't have anything to say about those two things. So
what was it that changed your mind?
I don't know, really. It was just like, I think it was like the moment that I after getting married and everything, and like realizing that there will be a time that I'm going to be pregnant, or hopefully, and have children of my own and stuff. And I guess that kind of like spiraled through to thinking about abortion rights and women's rights, and also like the time that we were in, just like the world that we're currently living in is just so shitty. And it's just like, no one should have anything to say about the things that you do with your body. Like it's just crazy to me, you know, how narrow-minded I used to be, you know, because like, and like reading all of the, because I follow this news outlet on Instagram called Now Simplified, I think it's called. And they like kind of like give you like the rundown of like current events. And they were talking about how the government can't proclaim that they're pro-life, or like politicians can't proclaim that they're pro-life if they can't guarantee the safety of our kids, or like baby formula. Just this week, I was on the phone with my cousin. She just gave birth, like maybe a month ago, and she's having trouble pumping. And she's like, I can't find formula. And I'm like, that is so fucking scary. You can't say that you want us to have children, and then you're not going to be able to provide for us. Yeah. You can't give us free healthcare. You can't give us literally anything. Everything is always a game for you. But I have to have this child regardless of the circumstance. Like, it's just so wild to me. And I think when I got married, and not living at home, I was able to explore different things, like just reading about different things, understanding different things, building my own opinions, you know, because when you're at home, you're kind of like surrounded by those opinions all the time. But when you're on your own, building a new life for yourself, you have the opportunity to build your own thoughts, build your own opinions, have your own relationship with a God, you know, have your own relationship with anything really, you know? So I think it was really like when I got married, I would say that it kind of shifted a little bit, but yeah.
Hopefully somebody is still listening to this podcast who maybe doesn't agree with us, and they heard you and they're like, maybe I'll do more research. So you never know.
This country doesn't give us anything, you know, we have to bust our asses for a lot of shit. And so like, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense
at all. No.
Okay, so I'm going to explain a little bit what the case today was. Again, this is a very high level overview of everything that happened. This case was Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. Jackson's Women's Health Organization, they sued the state officials over a law that Mississippi enacted, which said that except in a medical emergency or in the case of a severe fetal abnormality, that a person could not intentionally or knowingly perform or induce an abortion if the probable gestational age of they use the term unborn human, and that's purposeful to be provocative, to get people to read this law and be like, that's a human, not a fetus. When fetus is the correct, in my opinion, and I believe in science, the correct term to use. And among medical professionals.
Medical, I was gonna say medical, yeah.
So if the probable, and probable is the word they use, probable gestational age is greater than 15 weeks, a person could not have an abortion, and an abortion provider could not perform an abortion. Otherwise, they would face fines and jail time. This clinic sued Mississippi state officials. The lower courts prevented enforcement of the law. Basically, they said this law is unconstitutional. We're not going to uphold it. 2 lower courts made this decision. Then the state officials appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court granted cert, which is basically just an order that allows a higher court to review a lower court decision. So that's how this case was able to be heard. What the court is saying is that since the Constitution does not say anything about abortion, then it must be left up to the states to decide what to do or for Congress to act. And basically, they're saying that it should be left up to our elected representatives because we, the people, vote for them. And in turn, the idea is that when we elect a representative, they will do what we want. Does that happen? I don't think so.
That just left a bad taste in my mouth. I cannot. I swear to God, I can't.
I was told that at one point it was supposed to become a federal law wasn't it supposed to become a federal law? And then it
So Obama had the chance to do something on the federal level. Biden has had the chance ever since, well, from the moment they got in office, but especially since the draft of the decision was leaked. He's had the chance. There have been chances.
You know what really just racks my brain is just how we're so focused on this Constitution that was written by, how many of them were it? 12 white old men in a room with a candle. And what year was it? The 1776?
Yes. 1776.
One of those. And I just, why are we so like the world is not 1776 forever. We are in 2022. The world changes, culture changes, people change. And as that changes, as things change, so should our laws and so should our government officials and our representatives and everybody that has the higher power. It's not, why are we going back? How many years? 500? I can't do math, whatever that number is.
This is where like I have that same feeling, Liana, but just like what we see with family, right? Elders, they're never going to change. It's never going to change. They're set in their ways. It's very old school.
So I'm glad you guys brought that up, because now I can talk to y'all about the different modes of interpretation for reading the Constitution. Two of the important ones in this instance are originalism and textualism. So this was a 6-3 decision. So 6 of the justices agreed on it. 3 of them did not.
Mm-hmm.
The majority is using an originalism theory and a textualism theory. And with the originalism theory, they're saying that the Constitution should be interpreted based on what a reasonable person living at the time of its adoption, so 1776, would have understood the text to mean. So could also be textualism, but I think it's a mashup of both. Is textualism, you rely on the plain text of the document. What is in the document is what we go off of. And basically, it's also called the four corners theory because you do not leave the four corners of the document. Justice Samuel Alito wrote the majority opinion. The majority opinion says nothing about what kinds of abortion laws may be proper, but it does suggest that abortion can be banned from the moment of conception. But there are no exceptions to that rule. And I just want to say that, you know, the exceptions that people usually like to point to are like rape, incest, stuff like that. But also, you don't need any of those things to want to have an abortion. You could just simply not want children.
Thank you.
And you can have an abortion. It does not matter. A lot of states implemented trigger laws. I don't know if it was when that Supreme Court draft was leaked, but I'm assuming yes. Texas is a state that had a trigger law. So, and trigger laws are basically as soon as the court overruled Roe, the law would go into effect. Some states may have time delays written in. So I believe Texas had a trigger law put into place, but I don't think it goes into effect for 30 days. But again, because the law is so up in the air, abortion clinics across Texas, I believe, were closing.
Can we overturn a Supreme Court rule? Or is that, because I know that I've been reading like you can, like people vote in November for their own state, but you can't like go against the Supreme Court, right?
So when you say we, do you mean we the people?
I guess.
Or can the court,
Like
the Supreme Court overrule
their own ruling?
So they did. That's what they did here.
See,
they overruled Roe.
It could go back. It could go back, but depending on who is on our Supreme Court justice, right?
Oh, okay.
This was decided along ideological lines. These 6 justices are conservatives. 3 of them Trump appointed specifically because they said they were willing to, or they indicated they were willing to overturn Roe. Aside from overturning Roe and women losing the right to do what they want with their uteruses.
Mhm.
This is also a big deal because the court overturned precedent, and precedent is supposed to be sacred. Not only has Roe been upheld, it's consistently been reaffirmed in several cases. But this court was willing to toss that all aside. And I truly do not believe that it's because they think it's the judicial thing to do. I truly believe that they morally are so opposed to abortion that they decided does not matter. So, in Alito's opinion, he's saying that you cannot read a right to abortion into the Constitution because the word doesn't appear there. So, because the word abortion does not appear in the Constitution, you cannot create that right out of thin air. So, some people might be wondering, because I know a couple of days before Dobbs came down, there was a big case that the Supreme Court decided regarding gun control. And they decided in this most recent case that states can't decide how to handle guns. So you may be like, I don't understand, because they said that states can decide how to handle abortion. Alito justifies this by saying that the Second Amendment specifically mentions the right to bear arms, which the word guns does not appear in the Second Amendment, but has always been understood as the right to bear arms.
But wait, but you were also saying how like they're going off the originality, interpretation, and also the textualism. So he's contradicting himself in this case then, isn't he? Like, isn't he saying like the right to bear arms? That doesn't necessarily mean guns.
It's precedent. It's been interpreted as guns.
Okay. The arms is interpreted as guns.
Also because so it's like broken up into two parts, and it's a well-regulated militia. So intuitively, the leap for arms to be guns, it's not wrong, in my opinion.
Right.
So these 9 justices technically have a quote unquote boss, which is Chief Justice John Roberts. He's like the head of the justices. And he wrote a concurring opinion, which is basically, I agree with you. And usually it's like, I agree with you, but. So in this case, he agrees on upholding the Mississippi law, but he doesn't want to go as far as Alito and the other justices. He does not think that Roe versus Wade should be overturned, because what happened was the lawyers were saying we should uphold this law, the Mississippi law, the Dobbs lawyers. Mm-hmm. But also while upholding this law, we should overturn Roe v. Wade. Mm-hmm. He also thinks that like the court should handle the matter that's at hand, which is partially why he probably believes that Roe versus Wade should not have been overturned.
I have a question.
Because the matter at hand was the Mississippi law. Roe was like the subpart, but like a really big subpart that it was basically the main portion.
The boss justice, right? He could have been like, sorry, this guys.
That's how I would say it too. Sorry, that's not. It's
this is me.
That's how I'm interpreting. That's how I'm understanding it. That's how it's going to come out. So yes, the head chief, the head,
the boss justice, the boss, right?
Of all the other justices.
If he didn't agree with the majority, could that have brought everything back to zero, or would they still have just overturned it?
No, because it's a majority vote. So the way it usually goes is that the Chief Justice usually has more control over the court than what Chief Justice Roberts currently has. He would normally be able to sway opinions to get people to do like what he was wanting in this opinion. He doesn't have that, again, because the justices that agreed, as Alito, he's been on the court for a while, but Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and Neil Gorsuch, those are the three new ones that Donald Trump appointed. Then you have Alito, Clarence Thomas, and John Roberts. Those are the other half of the majority opinions. Now,
Okay.
Thomas has been at it to try to overturn Roe versus Wade for a while now. And we'll get to him in a minute, don't worry.
Okay.
But the next one we got who wrote a concurrence is Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Now,
Can't wait to hear this.
he agrees with the opinion both in upholding the Mississippi law and in overturning Roe versus Wade. But because Justice Alito says that it should be left up to the states, Brett Kavanaugh, his butt is that he doesn't think it's constitutional for states to tell their residents that they may not travel to other states to get an abortion. Justice Kavanaugh is saying people have a constitutional right to travel, so a state cannot stop them from traveling outside of their state to get an abortion. And the right to travel.
I understood it wrong.
It's okay. The right to travel is a right not named in the Constitution, but it has been interpreted via the Constitution from the Equal Protection Clause. The issue with that is it's expensive. And when half the fucking states want to tell people that they cannot have abortions, what do you think happens to the clinics that are available? They become overwhelmed. No appointments. You have to take off work to travel. You have to spend money to travel. And there are activists out there who think that because the right to abortion was established through the 14th Amendment, the due process clause of the 14th Amendment, which is just you cannot infringe on someone's life, liberty, and property without due process of law. That's basically what it says. The Equal Protection Clause, you got to treat people equally. So other abortion activists want people to use or want the court to use the Equal Protection Clause to try to establish the right to an abortion because they say it infringes on a woman's right to be a full person in society.
Okay, so basically this guy is saying that if people want an abortion, like they are allowed to travel to another state, but he's not okay with abortion?
He's not okay with abortion, no, but he's saying that because we're giving it up to the states, like we're letting the states decide what to do. If you don't want to legalize abortion, totally fine. You don't have to, but you can't stop people from traveling outside the state to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
So now we come to Clarence Thomas.
Let's hear it.
Here we go. So Clarence Thomas says the logic of this opinion suggests that other precedents are at risk and should be reconsidered because they're all based on the idea that the Due Process Clause protects these rights. Now, some of the rights that he is talking about are same-sex marriage. So he wants to look at Obergefell, which is the case that legalized same-sex marriage. And he name drops these. He name drops these in his opinion. He also wants to look at Lawrence versus Texas, which was the case, and I believe it was in 2003. And it gave people the right to privacy in their freaking bedrooms. You want whatever you want to do when you have sex, go for it. Do it. As long as it's consensual, the state should not have a say in what you're doing in there. And this specifically was a case between two men because Texas had an anti-sodomy law at the time. Also names drops Griswold, which if you guys remember earlier, I mentioned as the case that gave married couples the right to buy and use contraceptives. He name drops all three of these cases in his concurrence. He wants to look, and honestly, this court, I think they're willing to give it to him. What Clarence Thomas conveniently leaves out is Loving versus Virginia. Clarence Thomas is a Black man married to a white woman. So he says, all of these rights that have nothing to do with me, let's look at them. The one that does, no reason to touch it.
Because that's the one that was the interracial one.
Yes, the interracial marriage, Loving versus Virginia.
Yeah.
But by mentioning these three, that case is also up for grabs. And I will say, with my whole heart, this court's not stopping at Roe. As long as these 6 people are the majority, the conservative majority, everything else is up for grabs. And I hate to say it because the court is, it's not supposed to be splitting along these ideological lines. When Roe was decided, it was a 7-2 majority, and a lot of those justices were conservative. Conservatives were okay with abortion in the 70s. And, you know, Justice Ginsburg, she has a famous quote where she says that the court should have never gotten involved because all it did was politicize and bring a divide in the movement. Justice Ginsburg thought that we as a society would get there eventually where we would legalize all states would legalize abortion, or federally there would be a law that protected abortion rights. She thought that by deciding Roe versus Wade, all the progress that had been made set them back. I don't know. I also think Justice Ginsburg should have retired. She should have retired and given that seat up to someone younger. Conservatives, abortion wasn't a hot topic for them. It became a hot topic when they realized the evangelicalists were a very strong portion of their base and that they had strong feelings about abortion. Ronald Reagan initially had signed into law something that protected abortion in California. Then when he got evangelicalist as part of his base, he changed his stance on abortion. It's not...
But that's the thing though. Like, why are you involving religion into this? This has nothing to do with religion.
Nothing.
This has nothing to do with religion.
Okay, so I will say that I think it's more for politicians. I think there are some politicians who genuinely believe that abortion is morally wrong. But what I think is more of the issue is money. They get donations from these big religious groups, and that's how religion starts to sway.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I say this all the time. Everything always comes to money. I literally,
Everything is monetized. Yeah. It's all about money.
But this shouldn't be one of those things. It's just so wild to me. It's so wild to me. And like how Christina's saying how like this is not going to stop here. Like I believe it too. And that's so scary.
Same.
If you've made it this far, congratulations. Thank you. We love you. We really appreciate you hearing us out on this issue. But you may also be thinking, why is this so important? Why should I care about this? And I would tell you that pre-Roe abortions were incredibly unsafe. 17% of all deaths due to pregnancy and childbirth were the result of an illegal abortion. And making abortion illegal will not stop abortion. It'll only allow for unsafe abortions to take place. Making abortion illegal will never be the answer. Providing people with healthcare, accessible, affordable healthcare, birth control, and educational resources will always lower the abortion rate before making abortion illegal does.
Yeah. Wow. Just all of it is just so shocking to me. Not shocking, just like I'm so disappointed. I guess that's the right word to say.
This is also important because 59% of women obtaining abortions are already mothers. Mothers who realize what it means to have and care for a child. It's not an easy decision deciding to have an abortion. It's a personal decision that people struggle with.
Yeah, I feel like people think that I'll just go ahead and like shrug it off kind of thing. And it's not like that. Like, no. And I feel like a lot of that has to do with the idea that women are put on this earth to procreate, and like, we're just taking out like the thing that we're made for or whatever, And I think that's where a lot of like the guilt comes from, where the thought comes from. Like it's not just like, oh my God, I'm pregnant, I'm just going to go to a clinic and pop a pill or like get this procedure done. Like, no, it's so much more than that. It's a scary thing. I'm not saying like it's easy, but it's not a shrug it off your shoulder kind of situation. It's definitely a lot more thought that's put into it,
I also think that people have this perception that it's young people going to get abortions, unwed people going to get abortions. And I feel like that's a very old-fashioned idea of the people who are getting abortions. Sometimes people don't want kids, and that is perfectly fine. It's crazy to me that this is a decision that they can come to when you take into account how many children there are in the US foster system, when you take into account that we don't have universal health care, childcare isn't affordable. Literally, the world is on fire. And they're like, yes, please bring more children into the world. And it baffles me. I don't understand it. And I don't know if I could ever understand it, because people who bring children, like, you shouldn't be forced to bring a child into the world. You should want to bring a child into the world that you know you can love and care for. And even in the dissenting opinion, Justice Sotomayor said that, childbirth is supposed to be something, when it's by choice, that is beautiful, that's wonderful, and that can become a nightmare when it's forced upon you. I don't get it, you guys. I don't.
Yeah. And if they don't want us to have abortions, then they should just give us birth control, contraceptives, sex ed, maybe. That'll be a good way to start. Right. Right.
I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves. I know this news was hard to hear over the weekend, but I'm sure you're wondering, well, what can I do? Because I know Friday, after I sat with my feelings all day, I was like, you know what? Maybe it doesn't even matter. Maybe nothing I do matters. But as we know, that is not the case. Everything, any little thing that we can do, it matters and it's important. So if you have the means, you can start out by donating to your local abortion fund. These funds are put in place to help people with the expenses associated with getting an abortion. And the site that you can check out to find your local abortion fund, because there are national ones, but your state, your city probably has a local fund for people in your area. And you can check out the National Network of Abortion Funds at abortionfunds.org. You can also check out the National Latina Institute for Reproductive Justice. It gives you a ton of great information on what they do and how you can get involved with their organization. You can also check out Sister Song Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective. This is a Southern-based national membership organization, and their purpose is to build an effective network of individuals and organizations to improve institutional policies and systems that impact the reproductive lives of marginalized communities. Because make no mistake, overturning Roe versus Wade, making abortion illegal, it will always harm women of color more, always. It will always, always harm our communities more than it will harm white communities. White women, rich people, they will always have access to safe abortions. Doesn't matter whether it's legal or not. You can also visit wetestify.org if you still are on the fence, or maybe you just want to learn more about what women who get abortions go through. This site is specifically set up to share stories from women who have had abortions. All of these resources will be linked in our show notes.
And just remember to vote, you guys. I think the election is coming up in November, as something that you can also be a part of the change for. Please vote. It's very important. I also used to be one of those people that didn't believe in voting because I felt like my vote didn't matter. And that became especially true when Donald Trump became president. But, our votes do matter. So please vote, because we need to be the change in our own world. We need to be it.
Right. And again, if you're still listening and you stuck around
Hello.
for this episode, hello, thank you. But if you agree with us, you don't agree with us, it's just important that we, discuss these things and be real with you guys and be real with what's going on in the world right now, in the country.
I'll say that for me, abortion is a black and white issue. People shouldn't tell me what to do with my body. And that's the end of it. I believe that everybody has the right to obtain an abortion, to do whatever the freak it is they want with their uterus. Do what you want. Have a million kids, have no kids. I don't care. I also, if you choose not to believe that women have the right to abortion, I would just ask you to do a little research. I hope that there are people out there who can be convinced. You guys, if you personally would never get an abortion, that is perfectly fine. You are allowed to do that.
Right, right.
But the same way with religion that we say not to impose your religious beliefs on people, do not impose your political belief onto someone. Do not think that just because you would not do that with your uterus, that you're allowed to tell other people what to do with their uteruses.
Agreed.
If you want to talk about it some more, y'all know our DMs are open. As long as you approach us in a kind and respectful manner, you will get a reply. We do not let any DM go unreplied. And we love to talk to you guys and let everybody know, this is not okay. We have to do something. And I fully believe, maybe for my children, maybe for their children, I don't know. It'll be different. I want this world to be a little better than it is. I want it not to be a dumpster fire. Would really appreciate that. You guys, I wish we were leaving y'all on a happier note today. Hopefully our resources, though, do provide positive note, maybe, question mark, hopefully. Until next week, you guys, take care of yourselves. We'll be back next Wednesday. Bye.